Hey guys, I'm back again, and this is going to be part one of the 26 books that I have chosen to be my prominent TBR list. So that is the books that I would really like to finish by the end of the year, but that's not going to be written in total stone because you know how I am. I can be a little, fickle about choosing what I want to read, and these are the books that I feel like I would need to focus on, I really need to read, because they've been on the shelf and I need to read them. Some of them are new, most of them you've already seen. So let's get started though, because there are 26 books. So let's start with the first one, which is E.R. Braith's To Sir with Love. Now, this book you probably know was actually a movie, a very famous movie, and you can see the picture here with Sidney Poitier, who played the role of the West Indian teacher who goes to teach in east side of London, predominantly white school, and the relationship he has with these children. Now this is based off of Braithwaite's, I think, real experience. This is a movie I enjoyed thoroughly watching when I was younger, but I have not read the book, and apparently the book has just been basically forgotten because of the movie. So next I have on my list is Disgrace, J.M. Coetzee. Now this is on my list primarily because of Camille and Denise D. Cooper. Thank you guys for talking about Coetzee, and nobody else is talking about Coetzee. So I've decided to pick up Disgrace, and I'm surely going to pick this one up because I am very curious to experience his writing. Next, I have The Secret History of Vegas, which is another book that is from a writer that I don't know very well, which is Chris Abani, which I have spoken about him on here before. This, I think, is sort of like a detective story. The guy's name is Detective Salazar. And so I'm kind of curious to see what he does with this. Abani is a writer that a lot of people talk about on the blogosphere. I've seen a lot of reviews of his stuff, and everybody says it's really good. Next, I'm going to pick up, hopefully, The Awesome Girl's Guide to Dating Extraordinary Men, which is by Ernesta T. Carter. Now, Ernesta T. Carter wrote the other book, which is very well known, which is, well, I would say well known probably in the Black community, but not as well known overall in literature. And that's 32 Candles, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It's kind of, I won't say it's a chick lit, I'll say it's more like what Denise says. She says it's a girlfriend book. I think this is a girlfriend book as well. And I'm just curious to see what's in it, because I don't think I have seen one review anywhere for this book. I think she self-published this one, and that might be one of the reasons why it hasn't gotten much press. But I'm quite happy to check this one out. It says it's about these 4 girlfriends, and they're all going to turn 30. So it's sort of about how they're going to begin their 30s and their friendship and their love relationships and stuff. So that's this one. Next, there's The Sellout, which I've spoken about this one already before. This is Paul Beatty. This is his newest book. The other one I talked about is, I think it's called The White Boy Shuffle is the other one. So that's another one that, I could probably pick up as well. But I think I'm going to go with this one first. Next we have Camilla Shumsey's A God in Every Stone. This one was shortlisted for the Orange Prize and granted Best of Young British Novelist. This one I'm very curious to see what it's about. Okay, it says, July 1914, young English woman Vivian Rose Spencer is running up a mountainside in an ancient land surrounded by fig trees and cypresses. Soon she will discover the temple of Zeus. The call of adventure and the ecstasy of love. Thousands of miles away, a 20-year-old Pathan Guayam is learning about brotherhood and loyalty in the British Indian Army. So it does have an Indian, like sort of a British Indian maybe kind of feel to it. This might be one that you might like, Mathis, because I think it's like 1914, that kind of period. Next, I'm going to pick up Beautiful Ruins, which is by Jess Walter. And this one came in, I think, 2 years ago. And this got, I think it got mostly good reviews, but it was a novel that wasn't, I wouldn't say people were rushing out to get it. I got this one after the fact. I got it used, and I am very interested in reading it. It's a story that takes place in 1962, and it's somewhere along the Italian coastline. So I'm kind of interested to see exactly where this one is going to go, because I've been very curious about this book since I saw it in the beginning and saw the cover and everything. I don't really know anything particularly about it other than that, and I want to keep it that way so that when I get into it, it's fresh. Next you have, this is my favorite, you know, James Baldwin, Going to Meet the Man. This is a collection of short stories, and I can't wait to get into it. Next on the list is The Street by Ann Petrie, and I talked about this. Danielle from OneSmallPaw has talked about this book, has raved over it, and I will definitely be digging into this one for sure. If I don't get to it, that would be really surprising. So I will link her video where she reviews this book below. Next, I have The Children Act by Ian McEwan. Now, this is one that I picked up probably at the beginning of the year, at some point when it first came out. Ian McEwan is a writer that is very descriptive and very methodical about his writing. He tells a story, and he really knows how to get across what he wants you to get across as a reader. This one has some aspects of this book deal with things that have happened in his real life, but he's changed things around a bit. So I'm interested in getting to this. I've only seen good reviews. I have seen nothing bad on this book. Next on my list is Barracuda, and this is from Christos Dolklas, who is Australian of Greek origin, and this is his second book. His first book was The Slap, which I read a few years back with my book club, which sparked lots of discussion. The Slap. So I picked up this one. I picked this one up, I think it was, I want to say it was last year I picked this one up. It's about a young guy. His name is Daniel, and he is from the working class in Australia, and he is striving to be the, you know, the head champion in swimming. So that's what this one is about. Next, I have The Sacrifice by Joyce Carol Oates. This is her latest novel, which I have heard very little about, actually, and the few reviews or the few commentaries I've heard on this book have not been good. So I'm a little worried where this is going to take me. But basically it says, when a 14-year-old girl is the alleged victim of a terrible act of racial violence, the incident shocks and galvanizes her community, exacerbating the racial tension that has been simmering in this New Jersey town for decades. In this masterful work of fiction, Joyce Carol Oates explores the uneasy fault lines in a racially troubled society. In such a tense, charged atmosphere, Oates reveals that there must always be a sacrifice of innocence, truth, trust, and ultimately of lives, unfolding in a succession of multiracial voices in a community transfixed by this alleged crime and the spectacle unfolding around it. This profound novel exposes what and who the sacrifice actually is, and what consequences these kind of events hold for us all. So yeah, I don't know about this one, guys. I'll just have to read it and tell you what I think, but I really fear this one was not a good buy. And then I have The Healing, which you have heard Tasha talk about, Denise D. Cooper's daughter. She raved about this book, which is by Jonathan Odell, who is the white Southern guy from Mississippi who writes about the Black experience, and I'm not so sure about this one either. So she said it was beautifully written. I've had it on my shelf, so I figured, okay, why not give it a try and see exactly where Mr. Odell is going with his work. Blackwater Rising, and this is from Attica Locke. Now, if you don't know Attica Locke, I read one of her books, I think it was 2 years ago, and reviewed. It was called The Cutting Season, and it was a sort of detective novel set on a plantation in Louisiana, and it was really, really good. Now, Blackwater Rising was the first book she wrote in 2009. And it has the main character, which is a detective in this novel, which she started, and her newest novel has come out recently, and it's called Pleasantville. And so I'm interested to read Pleasantville really quickly, because it has the same detective in it as in this one. So I'm going to read this one first and probably follow it up with this one. So yeah, Blackwater Rising and Pleasantville. Next, I'm going to pick up the Austen Clarke trilogy, and I'm going to pick up number 1, which is The Meeting Point. Now this one is very interesting. I talked to you about this in my last haul, which is a book about West Indians moving to work and live in Canada, and that's what this trilogy is about, and this is book 1. Next, I have on my list The Emperor of Ocean Park by Stephen L. Carter. I heard about this one through Denise D. Cooper. Very interesting. It's a family saga, and I love family sagas because mess happens in family sagas, and I like that. So this one, which I have heard about, I had heard about it also before Denise mentioned it on her Black History Month video, but you know, it went out of my mind. I never really tried to pick it up or anything, so I'm glad that she mentioned it so that I got a chance to pick it up and check it out and see what it's all about. Next, I have on my list Jam on the Vine by LaShonda Catrice Barnett. Now this is a new release, 2015, and it should be very interesting. It's about a newspaper reporter, and it deals with race and some other things, and I think it's the beginning of the 20th century, so around 1919 or 1920, something like that. So this I'm very excited for. Unfortunately, I haven't heard very many people talk about it. I haven't seen any reviews on it. I heard the review on NPR where she talks about her book, and it sounds really, really interesting. Next on my list is A Spool of Blue Thread, which is a new release from Ann Tyler. This is another family saga, and that's what Ann Tyler does best, apparently, is family sagas. So I'm going to check this one out. I've heard only good things about it. It is also shortlisted for the Bailey's Women's Prize this year. So yeah, so that's one reason, another reason why I want to pick this one up. Okay, next I have Zadie Smith, Changing My Mind. Now, you know I love me some Zadie Smith. And this one is an essay collection. And it is one of the 2 books that I have left to read from her repertoire of books. So I have this one, and I have The Autograph Man. So I decided to pick up this one first because I'm very curious about this one. And I remember hearing Grace Eckmeyer talking about this one. She said she liked it. And I also read a couple of other blogs where people mentioned it and they said they really liked it. So I'm kind of anxious to get to that one. Next, I have Some Sing, Some Cry, which is by Nsoke Nishange and Ifa Bayeza. And this is a beautiful book, and it is one of those saga stories which takes place around Reconstruction and goes to the Harlem Renaissance and then goes to Vietnam. So I'm kind of interested in getting into this. It's a chunker, but I'm sure it's worthwhile. Shange is a very interesting writer. There are other books that I read from her. I read, of course, Sassafras, Cypress, and Indigo, which I think I would like to do as a reread at some point because it is a very good book too. Next, I have Agat, and this is by Marlene van Niekerk, and she is an Afrikaner. And this is a book about an Afrikaner woman and her servant. And the first time I heard about this book was when I saw an interview between Marlene van Niekerk and Toni Morrison. They were both being interviewed together, and they were discussing their writing, and they were discussing each other's books. It was very interesting. I saw it on YouTube, so if I can find it again, I will link it below. It's very interesting, and this book sounds extremely interesting. So I'll read a little bit of the back so you can understand. In the waning days of South African apartheid, Milla, a 67-year-old white woman, is condemned to silence by a creeping paralysis. As she struggles to communicate with her maidservant turned caretaker, Agathe, the complicated history of their relationship is revealed. Life for white farmers in 1950s South Africa was full of promise. Young and newly married, Milla carved her own farm out of a swath of Cape mountainside. She earned the respect of the male farmers in her community and raised a son. But 40 years later, all she has left are memories and the proud, contrary Agathe. With sadistic precision and yet infinite tenderness, Agathe performs her duties, balancing anger with loyalty. As Milla's white world and its certainties recede, and Agathe faces the prospect of freedom, the shift of power between them mirrors the historic changes happening around them. Marlene van Niekerk's epic masterpiece portrays how two women and perhaps a nation can forge a path toward understanding and reconciliation. So this is a really interesting book, although I don't remember a lot of people talking about it. Next, I have The Book of Negroes. I don't have to tell you that much about that. This was a book that was spoken about a little bit on BookTube at one point. It has now been turned into a TV series, so which I haven't seen. I can't see it here in France. I can't even get it here through the net. It's blocked for me, so whatever. Hopefully one day I'll get to see it, maybe on video or something. But this is supposed to be one extraordinary story. I have heard nothing but excellent reviews of this book. Next, I have The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray by Walter Mosley. This is another book that I've heard nothing but excellent reviews of. In particular, there is the review that Dominique from Token America did on it, which was very good, which I will link below if you haven't seen it. But this is one particular book about a love relationship, and it's supposed to be excellent. Next, I have on my list The Bees, and this is by Laline Paul. And I can't remember exactly what her origins are, but I'll put it below. But she has been shortlisted as well for the Women's Prize, Bailey's Women's Prize this year. And one of my favorite bloggers, Claire at Words by Words, talked about this book in a review, and she said it was extremely good. So I picked it up. Next, I have White Oleander. Now this is because of SteveReadsBooks. This is why I have bumped this one up. I've had this book probably for 2 or 3 years on my shelf and have not read it because this one, I hear it is a rough ride read. SteveReadsBooks was talking about how this was one of his favorite books. This is something that I probably should have read years ago and haven't read yet. This is basically, it says, everywhere hailed as a novel of rare beauty and power, White Oleander tells the unforgettable story of Ingrid, a brilliant poet imprisoned for murder, and her daughter Astrid, whose odyssey through a series of Los Angeles foster homes, each its own universe with its own laws, its own dangers, its own hard lessons to be learned, becomes a redeeming and surprising journey of self-discovery. It's a chunker, but I know it's a great book because I've heard nothing but excellent reviews of White Oleander. Last but not least on the list, I have Dust, which is a book that I've had since it came out in 2014. It is by Yvonne Adiambo Awa, and this is another sort of family saga book taking place in Nairobi. So that's going to be a change for me because I'm used to reading mostly books. It seems like every African book I pick up is a Nigerian for some reason. I don't know. They've got the lease on writing, the Nigerians, but I'm glad to be picking this one up. But Teacup Wish talked about this book. She mentioned that she was going to be reading it as well. I don't know if she has read it, but Teacup Wish, if you're watching this, maybe we could buddy read this together. You know, if you're interested, let me know. Hit me up below. So that's all I have for you today. That is my hopefully TBR. I hope to get to all of these, but that is a hope and a dream. But I'm gonna definitely try to stick to mostly to this list. Now I notice a lot of them are chunkers, so I might have to read some short books in between to give me a break. But like I said, if the book is really good and it's long, that doesn't matter. I'll read right through. There's no problem. If it's there's some that are gonna be slow, I might have some problems with that, but I'll just have to push through and try to get through the entire list. We're almost halfway through the year, so technically I should be able to get to all of these, technically. Now you're probably wondering, well, why didn't you put Toni Morrison as her new one on there? Well, because I'm gonna read it this month, so I didn't put any of the other books that I'm gonna read this month on the list, because that would be kind of like cheating if you want, you know. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if there's any of these that you've already read that you thought were good, or that you already read you thought were bad, or any of these that you're curious about, you know, reading yourself. Let me know below. So I'm going to get back to my reading on this beautiful day. As you can see, it's just as sunny as it was yesterday, but I'm going to get myself some lunch, and then I'm going to get into my reading for the rest of the afternoon. Bye.